Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to inspect this old digital receiver to see whether it still works. However, after a quick observation and basic inspection, it seems that this device is no longer functional. But instead of throwing it away, I'm going to reuse its components and transform it into a homemade TV antenna. Can a device that appears completely useless be given a new purpose? Let's go through the building process step by step and find out the final result together. First, I'll use a screwdriver to remove the outer casing so I can access the internal components needed for this project. After taking a closer look, I noticed that the circuit board inside can be reused as the central connection point for the antenna system. So, I removed the circuit board and set it aside for this project. Next, I use a short section of signal cable to serve as the link between the circuit board and the antenna's receiving frame. First, I use a utility knife to strip away the outer insulation of the cable. Once the insulation is removed, the copper core inside is exposed and ready for the connection process. Then, I attach an F5 connector to the end of the cable to create a signal connector. After that, I wrap electrical tape around the connection point to secure it firmly and protect it from loosening or accidental short circuits during use. At the other end of the signal cable, I also strip away the outer insulation. However, this time I twist the shielding wires surrounding the cable into a separate strand to make the connection process easier. Once completed, I end up with a 2-branch connector like this, ready for the next assembly steps. Here, I have several small electrical wires, and they will serve as conductors for the antenna system. First, I strip the insulation from the ends of the blue and red wires to expose the copper cores inside. Then, I twist these wire ends together to create stronger and more secure connections. Next, I repeat the same process with the remaining blue and red wires, joining them together to complete the electrical branches for the antenna system. Next, I strip the insulation from the remaining ends of each wire to expose the copper cores inside. Then, I twist the wire ends together to keep them neat and make the connection process easier and more secure. In the next step, I connect these wires to the signal cable prepared earlier. To make the process more stable and prevent the components from moving during soldering, I place the connection on a holder to keep everything in position. Then, I use a soldering iron and a piece of solder wire to create solder joints at the connection points. Once the soldering is complete, I wrap electrical tape around the joints to protect the connections, reduce the risk of short circuits, and give the entire assembly a cleaner appearance. Next, I twist the blue wire together with the remaining shielding strand from the signal cable to create a complete electrical connection. Then, I wrap electrical tape around all the connection points to keep everything neat and provide additional protection during use. In the next step, I use a soldering iron and solder wire to create two solder joints on the circuit board. These will serve as the main connection points for the antenna system. After that, I place the joint between the two wires onto a holder to keep it stable while working. I then apply solder to the wire joints to pre-tin the connections, making it easier and more secure to attach them to the circuit board. Once everything is prepared, I solder the two wire connections firmly onto the two solder points on the circuit board. After completing this step, the wires are securely connected to the circuit board, forming a stable connection system for the homemade antenna. Here, I have a 3-port TV splitter, and I will reuse it as the receiving component of the antenna. This splitter will act as the center for receiving and distributing signals, helping complete the antenna system I am building. I use these sections of signal cable to build the receiving frame of the antenna. Next, I attach an F5 connector to one end of each cable to create connectors that fit the ports on the TV splitter. Once completed, the cables can be connected and removed more conveniently during use. In the next step, I strip a longer section of insulation from the cables to expose the copper cores inside. Then, I use a pin as a mold and wrap the exposed copper core around it to form the shape of the receiving frame. Shaping the wire this way helps create evenly sized coils while giving the antenna a cleaner and more balanced appearance. Finally, I connect these two receiving cable sections to the remaining two ports of the TV splitter to complete the antenna's receiving structure. At this point, the main receiving system of the homemade antenna is taking shape and is ready for the final assembly steps. In the next step, I reinstall the circuit board back into the casing of the old digital receiver. I carefully align all the components and arrange the wires properly to prevent them from being pinched or interfering with the assembly process. Next, I connect the cable from the circuit board to the remaining port of the receiving assembly to complete the internal wiring system. After checking everything once again, I close the digital receiver's cover just as it was originally. Then, I reinstall the remaining screws and tighten them securely to hold the outer casing firmly in place. At this point, the main body of the antenna is complete. In the next step, I apply hot glue around the base of the receiving frame to keep it firmly secured. The glue helps reduce movement and vibration during use while improving the overall durability of the structure. With that done, the entire antenna frame is now complete. Now I move on to building the antenna plug. First, I disassemble an old electrical plug to prepare it for the wiring process. Then, I connect the antenna wires to the two metal terminals inside the plug. Finally, I reassemble the plug just as it was originally, completing the antenna's connection interface. At this stage, the homemade antenna built from the old digital receiver is almost finished and ready for real-world testing. Next, I use a long signal cable as the connection between the antenna and the TV. First, I create a connector on one end of the cable to prepare it for assembly. Here, I have a female plug and a connector that will be used to connect to the TV. I attach the cable wires to the metal terminals of the plug and carefully align them to ensure secure and stable contact. Once everything is firmly secured, I reassemble the plug housing just as it was originally. Next, on the other end of the cable, I attach the connector that will plug directly into the TV signal input. I tighten and double-check all the connections to make sure the signal can be transmitted reliably during operation. Finally, I plug the cable connector into the antenna plug to complete the entire connection system. At this point, the homemade antenna built from the old digital receiver is fully assembled and ready for real-world testing to see how effectively it can receive TV signals. First, I'll switch through a few channels on the TV to check its signal reception before connecting the antenna. As you can see, without the antenna connected, the TV only displays the message, no signal. Next, I connect the DIY antenna. I just finished the signal input on the back of the TV for a real-world test. And here is the result. Almost immediately after connecting the antenna, the TV channels begin to appear. The picture is clear, the colors remain stable, and there are no continuous signal interruptions. To make the test more convincing, I perform one more experiment by disconnecting the antenna and observing what happens to the signal. As soon as I unplug the antenna, the screen instantly returns to the no signal message. All of the channels disappear, confirming that the previous reception truly came from this homemade antenna. Now, I reconnect the antenna once again. As you can see, within just a few seconds, the channels return and continue to operate normally. The picture remains clear and stable without any noticeable issues. This experiment shows that with a little creativity and by reusing old components, we can create practical devices for everyday life instead of throwing them away. Who knows? The items you consider useless today might become the materials for your next interesting DIY project. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.